by the afternoon. Into the evening time on Monday, further heavy snow showers across northern Scotland, drifting down into northeast England too. Met Office warnings continue to be enforced here. Icy conditions developing quite widely, and then perhaps later on into the early hours of Tuesday morning, some rain and some patchy snow across southern parts of England. Temperatures well below freezing under the clear skies, -5 to -8, possibly even a little lower. So into Tuesday, an icy start for many. Snow across northern Scotland, these filtering their way southwards around coastal areas into Northern Ireland and northern England. Patchy rain and snow still possible across some southern counties. This will move away, a cold feeling day for everyone. Remaining cold over the next few days, but perhaps just signs of something a little milder by Friday.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News. I'm Aaron Armstrong with your latest headlines. The former Health Secretary wanted to, quote, frighten the pants off everyone to ensure public compliance with constantly changing COVID rules. The latest leaked WhatsApp messages in the Sunday Telegraph show Matt Hancock and his team discussing how to utilise fear and guilt to make people obey lockdown, including using a new strain of the virus to scare the public. The Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, Jonathan Ashworth, has told us Mr Hancock's political career is over.
I think the key thing is that he accounts for himself in front of an inquiry. It comes back to this point, doesn't it? Why we need this inquiry to take place quickly. A lot of people lost their lives. There's a lot of people who think that the way in which lockdowns operated has had long-term implications on all kinds of fronts. everybody wants an inquiry because everybody wants to be able to see the evidence, to be able to debate it properly and calmly, and it's why we need to get on with it.
Well, in a separate leaked conversation with Matt Hancock, the UK's top civil servant, described Boris Johnson as a nationally distrusted figure. He feared he would be ignored by the public if the then Prime Minister introduced new lockdown rules. Simon Case was appointed Cabinet Secretary by Boris Johnson in September 2020. A spokesperson for Mr Johnson has declined to comment. Some rail passenger season tickets have gone up by hundreds of pounds today, in the largest increase in train fares for more than a decade. Ticket prices across England and Wales are rising by an average 5.9%. That despite strikes and cancellations. The Rail Minister, Hugh Merriman, says the increase is below inflation. However, Labour has described it as savage. Next week's remaining ambulance strikes in England have been called off. The Unite union, which represents 3,000 workers, has entered pay talks with the government. Unite's joined Unison and GMB, which say there's been a huge shift in the government's position. The strikes were to take place tomorrow and Wednesday. 2 men arrested following the shooting of a police officer in Northern Ireland have been released. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot several times in Omagh last month, and he remains in a critical but stable condition in hospital. 6 other men who are arrested and questioned as part of the investigation have also been previously released. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have received an invitation to King Charles' coronation. A spokesperson for Harry and Meghan told The Times a decision on their attendance will not be disclosed at the present time. The announcement follows Prince Harry's interview with a trauma expert yesterday. He said in the interview he always felt different to the rest of his family, just like his mother, Princess Diana. The coronation will take place on the 6th of May. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's time for Free Speech Nation.
Your train never turns up, but you've got to pay more for it anyway. It's OK to air your dirty laundry in public if you're from a broken home, and everyone in the UK has deleted their WhatsApp history. This is Free Speech Nation. On tonight's show, I'll be speaking to a top media lawyer who was actually asked to act for the man himself, Matt Hancock, about whether releasing those juicy WhatsApps was indeed in the public interest. And we're in for some feisty debate on whether or not it's OK to take children and babies to drag shows. Plus, we'll meet the founder of Mankind Initiative, who's called on producers of Love Island to make sure male contestants aren't treated as badly by the female islanders. And after a man was left in tears on screen when his partner went off with another contestant. Your heart bleeds, doesn't it? Well, my studio guests this evening are Leo Kurz and Louis Schaefer. A man who uses free speech in his comedy and a man who probably threatens free speech. So let's get some questions from the audience. Our first question comes from Paul.
Hi. Is it ever OK to blame your own family for your own terrible decisions?
OK, so I guess this is about Prince Harry, who's back again. Somehow, he's the man who he's been interviewed on various things, his web stream. He just can't seem to let it rest, can he? In a live stream, Prince Harry claimed that he'd never looked for sympathy and isn't a victim, saying that he's urged everyone in the royal family to get therapy. Lewis, I'll start with you on this one, because if ever there's someone who needs to blame others, who do you blame?
Well, blaming your parents is really good because they're there, they're close by, you may be able to exact revenge, which is basically what Prince Harry did. And that's what makes this, I mean, you shouldn't start with me because I'm telling you, this is one of the most horrific stories today, because poor Prince Harry has basically tried to kill his own father and basically destroy the monarchy and destroy his dad. Why? Because his mother was a bit angry at the father. justifiably.
I'm glad you left it there, 'cause for a second I was right. I shouldn't have started with you.
You should not have
started. I saw where that was going, but you ended early. Good. Leo, save us.
Well, I mean, the whole point of therapy is that you don't burden your friends and family with all your boring self-reflection and whining about how everything is everybody else's fault. And instead, Prince Harry seems to have burdened us all with it, the entire world. He's like constantly whining on. He's got like, and for some reason, we're paying money for him to do it. It's like the opposite. It's like therapy where the therapist pays.
Yeah. He also says in the article about how he learned a different language through therapy and his family didn't speak that language, so they couldn't communicate. I mean, just use the language that they can understand.
Is it Spanish?
I don't know what it is. Something reflective. I mean, that's the thing about having therapy, though, is you do tell everyone in your life to go and have therapy.
Yeah.
I think that's how the marketing works.
Can I stand?
It's like
can I stand
veganism.
up? Sorry.
No, go on.
Can I stand up for? I stand up for Prince Harry. I feel so horrible for the guy because I know there's a movie. I forget what movie it is where the guy has been programmed to go into the future and murder someone, and that's what I know.
It's the Manchurian Candidate, but halfway through you change channel to a time travel film.
Yeah, something. The Manchurian Candidate, and I think what happened, and this is a horrible thought, but I've been there, is that poor Diana, she felt so mistreated by this man who left her to go out with that woman. And so she was furious. And the child was left with her and planted the seed in his head. Get your dad. Get your dad.
Yeah.
So it's
but not that one. The other one.
The other one. Get them. Yeah. Well, that could add to it. So the end of the day, Princess Diana was a horrible mother.
So many bits in that I should have cut you off, but somehow let you get to the end. Well, let's move on swiftly. Our next question is from Ryan.
Hello, good evening. Is it time for Trump to come back and make America great again? Again.
Is it time for Trump to come back and make America great again? Well, Donald Trump turned back the clock to the darkest elements of his presidency on Saturday with a fiery address that showed the threat to American democracy is far from over. These aren't my words, these are from a newspaper. Well, so Trump appeared to launch his White House bid with a display of demagoguery that framed his 2024 election as the final battle for America. I think I'm going to have to go Lewis first on that because I guess, well, you sound American.
Yeah.
You very rarely mention it, so I'm not sure. But are you American?
I am an American, if you could call a New York Jew an American. And there are many people in New York didn't consider us Americans. They didn't consider New Yorkers Americans, believe it or not, because we were so different from the rest of the country. But the World Trade Center, when that went down.
Of course you managed to get that in. Of course. Yeah. So far, Diana, 9/11.
They have to like me now. Yeah. But here's the problem. The problem is Donald Trump is a great man. And he says exactly what needed to be said 4 years ago or 6 or 8 years ago. We've moved on, basically. That's my own feeling. And I think the people, he is, even though I'm going to say this, I think the guy is one of the greatest Americans, and I say that with I know it's hard to believe, but I don't think it's ironic at all. He calls a spade, to use that term, and he says it. Like one of the things he said, why should America be paying for Europe's defense when they're killing us economically? And how could you argue with that? How could you argue with putting a wall on the border? You can't argue with any of this stuff. But, you know, a lot of people do not like him. They don't know why they don't like him, but they don't like him. Kind of like me.
Such a cross for balance. Try and argue with that. I mean, I'm not sure we brought the right person here. What do you think of Trump?
I just miss the way he says China. That gets him so far. And I think Trump, you know, he's incredibly entertaining. He's got he's an entertaining president, and you know the president's going to be on TV a lot. So why wouldn't you vote for an entertaining one instead of one who's just barely animated? So and also people criticise Donald Trump. They're like, oh, he's a demagogue, he's a populist. They're actually criticising him for saying things that are popular with voters. That's a slur now for politicians. Oh, heaven forbid that a politician should do something that the voters want, instead of just ramming this like WEF agenda down their throats, like making them eat bugs and not own a car and live in a 15-minute city.
Yeah. Can I say that I totally agree with him? I agree with him.
Oh, no, of course you do.
How can anybody disagree?
Yeah.
Do you think Donald Trump's the man to be doing it, though?
No, Rick DeSantis is, or whatever he's called. Is it Rick DeSantis?
Yeah.
Ron DeSantis.
Ron, yeah.
I always get him mixed up with the creator of Rick and Morty.
Which you could probably vote for as well and wouldn't be a bad shout, yeah. And even though you think he's like the greatest American, has his time been and gone and you now think you want to go for a different...
Well, the problem is, I look at someone like Rick DeSantis, Ron DeSantis, whoever the guy is.
Makes a great cartoon.
And he seems amazing. But because this state is so deep, and because I don't trust anybody anymore, and you can't trust anybody anymore, I'm thinking to myself, why is Ron DeSantis being pumped up like this? Is he as good as they say he is? I don't know. They basically undermined everyone's belief in reality.
Can you trust yourself anymore?
Unfortunately, I trust myself more.
Well, no wonder you're in a bad state.
Yeah, that is bad, because I never trusted myself. And I'm thinking to myself, when I see an expert, I think they're an idiot.
Are you sure you're not a robot? Have you ever actually opened yourself up? Because I reckon I could talk you into doing this live on TV. We know someone in this room's got a knife, so... That's entertainment. We might move on, I suppose.
The audience doesn't know what you're talking about in the TV land. They didn't see that.
Even without context, that's a good reference.
Funny comment.
Our next question is from Daryl.
Hi, panel. My question is, why are British women attracted to red-faced fat men?
Well, let's not be mean about red-faced fat men. I have some skin in this game. But this is because Jeremy Clarkson has been crowned the UK's sexiest man, as ladies can't resist his bad boy farm vibe, which is a sentence which shouldn't exist, should it? The 62-year-old broadcaster was the surprise winner in a poll by Illicit Encounters, which bills itself as the best online dating site for married people.
Yeah.
Delightful. So what do you think about that? You look at Jeremy Clarkson and realise that statistically we are less attractive than that.
Yeah.
That hurts, doesn't it?
Yeah, kind of. But you got to realise, I mean, this British women, they want a man who looks like them. So... But also, this is they polled, like, this is illicit encounters. It's for people having affairs. So they want somebody who's attainable and is going to be quick.
Yeah.
Delightful, yeah. Lewis.
Yeah.
Doesn't it hurt you to realise that you didn't even place in the top 10?
Well, because I'm not fat. That's why. And I look amazing because I'm on an all-meat diet. And Jeremy Clarkson, he just reeks of diabetes and gout. And I mean, you look at the guy, he's got his stomach sticking out, which is a sign of fatty liver disease, probably alcoholic-based. I think the reason...
But the women want somewhere to rest their crochet.
English women don't grow. The reason why he was chosen is because he probably has an amazing set of car keys, and they go to these stripper events. Don't they like base on the car keys? Don't they pull a car key out of the...
I don't know what you're talking about. No one here does. It's just... How do you know this detail of the swinging lifestyle?
I think that's what happens when you go to swinging parties. They put all the car keys in a bowl, and they pull a car key out. Probably his car key is like just a huge amount of keys.
The ones I go to have valet parking, so that means that.
And the fact is, I mean, British women...
I'm not cutting you off yet. Carry on.
I think there's Ofcom regulation.
Well, our final question for the moment is from Naz.
Is Glastonbury sexist and racist?
Is Glastonbury sexist and racist? This is an all-male, all-white Glastonbury headline lineup has been revealed. Emily Evis calls it a pipeline problem. The Arctic Monkeys, Guns N' Roses, Elton John are all in this year's headlines. I mean, I know that you commonly on social media find things that are racist.
Yeah.
And I think you found everything.
Yeah, everything is racist so far.
Yeah.
This week we had horse riding helmets. And Glastonbury. Glastonbury is definitely racist because they don't have an all-black lineup. I mean, have you seen an ad break? Everything's supposed to look like that. It's supposed to be entirely transgender, mixed-race couples, roller skating and pride flags. And if it's not that, then you're a far-right Nazi.
But this is music, and they're saying they couldn't find a musician of colour.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the musical genres might have been invented by those communities, and somehow, surely you could name some. It's not as if the only musicians available to you are Guns N' Roses and Elton John. They've made more musicians since then.
They have made more, and in fact, the lineup of Glastonbury is 43% non-white, which is a much higher proportion than the actual population. I think about 17% of the population of the UK is non-white. Well, the official population. Not to be.
So Glastonbury's not racist. The headline stage is.
The headline stage is, which, you know, back in the 70s when we were, like, developing these headliners in the 80s, like Guns N' Roses are from the 80s. Elton John's from probably the 60s. So, you know, when they were getting big, and also Elton John, I mean, he can't wait for this wave of wokeness to end so he can headline it, because he did cocaine for like 40 years. He's going to be dead very soon.
Are you going to Glastonbury, Lewis?
No, because it's racist. And it's racist because it charges over £300 for a weekend ticket. So that keeps people like me out. I mean, is it racist? I hope that they put the worst talent on just for their quota system, just to punish those people for being successful and good looking. Because I've seen the on the TV; they look amazing, and I'm going to be home. So I didn't make my point clear enough. I just hope the people who go there die.
Well, after the break on Free Speech Nation, should donor children be able to contact their biological parents before they're 18? More on that after the break.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Later in the show, I'll be turning Agony uncle with the help of my panel, Leo Kirsten, Lewis Schaefer, to help you deal with filtered dilemmas. Email us gbviews@gbnews.uk and we'll try to answer your issue. Now, a bit of an ethical dilemma for you now, actually. Should donor children be able to contact their biological parents before they're 18? Under new proposals, this could be a reality. Joining me to discuss this is director of the Donor Conception Network charity, Nina Barnsley, and dad of 2 sperm donation children, Danny Roddick. Thank you for being here with us. So, Danny, I'll come to you first, because you know what you're talking about this. Tell us about your 2 sons, and not graphically detailed what happened.
Well, graphically isn't actually that interesting, because it was really a medical procedure. My oldest is 20 and my youngest is 18. Both boys. I say to my children, but they're young men now, and they're both born through sperm donation. I pretty much told them from day one about their genetic origins. I told my oldest son when he was a week old. He's not the next Albert Einstein or anything like that.
That's a great way to get away with it. Mention it young so they can't remember.
Exactly. Practice it, try it out, you know. And if I'm being honest with you, part of that was about me getting used to actually saying the words in front of them. And I probably didn't feel that comfortable at the beginning. I feel very comfortable now. Well, I'm here in front of this audience talking about it, so obviously gone quite a journey over the years.
So how would you have felt if they'd have been able to contact biological parents earlier?
It's interesting that term you're using, biological parents.
Yeah, but it's kind of the given term, but I know...
Well, yeah, I mean, I would always say donor, and I think my children would say donor. The parent, for me, is the person who changes your nappy and, you know, is there for you on sports day or whatever. That's very much a parent for me.
OK. So we refer to them as DNA supply. Is that better?
Technically, they are. Absolutely. Look, and let's face it, I'm only here today because it has an importance, obviously. They've pretty much known from day one, really. As I said, they've kind of grown up with the information. Both of them were born prior to 2005, which means, in reality, they're probably not going to be able to find out the information, because it was 2005 where the end of anonymity happened. We have, though, started doing DNA testing. Myself, because I never knew my father, he left when I was 3, and we can't. But my oldest son and I thought it'd be a really good idea to go out and see if there's any information out there. So we have done that. OK. Any results from that you want to mention? I actually found a first cousin. First cousin in Florida. I'm 25% Portuguese, which I didn't know about that. Still supporting England in the World Cup, don't worry. Which was great. My youngest son found nothing. Oh, really? Oh, my oldest son, sorry, found nothing. But recently, a couple of weeks ago, he found a second cousin who lives in Wisconsin in America, and he's trying to trace and find out some information. And to be honest, at the time, I thought the donor was a bit of a threat to me. I don't feel that now. And if I met him, I'd probably like to shake his hand and say thank you, because, you know, my sons are the best thing that's ever happened in my life, really. Yeah, although we all know what he's done with that hand. Well, I could not mention it. I feel like I couldn't. I don't know. But so the possible changes to these laws, would this be a good move? And if so, why has it not happened before?
It would be a good move, I think, at least to give that as an option for people. So under the current framework, as Danny said, the law changed in 2005. So since then, no donor can be anonymous. They have to agree to be identifiable once a child reaches 18. But what's happened is those families are actually curious earlier than 18, so some of the children are very curious, parents can be curious. I imagine that the donors are also quite curious about what's happened to their donation and how those children are, hoping that they'll be like Danny's lovely sons. I think it's hard to picture the time in 2005. It was pretty revolutionary, actually, the move to ending anonymity. That was a massive change. And so it's not surprising that there were limits put on that. And I think just as it's unfolded over the years, it's clear that actually people would like a little bit more flexibility, and the current framework doesn't allow any flexibility. It's 18 or nothing, or you pursue it down a DNA testing route, which is kind of not what has been agreed, let's say. Yeah. Now, we've not got into the details in the setup of this story, but some people might be hearing it and thinking somehow it means you could be tracked down. There's a lot of agreement on all sides for this to actually happen, isn't there? Yeah, it's all consensual. So obviously the donor would be counselled, it would be made clear to them, as they are now, So now they're told, when you're 18, when the child reaches 18, they may be interested and may ask for contact information. They may not. So yes, under the new proposal, all donors would be alerted to the fact that that contact might be much sooner.
So if this was available to you earlier, do you think you might have pursued it? Because it was interesting you said that originally you might have considered the donor to be a threat, but then you realised it's not actually a threat. At what stage did that happen in your mind where you made your peace with that? And then would you have pursued trying to actually track down, I've used that phrase, even though it's not what this would have been about,
It's all right.
finding contact with that donor?
I mean, for me, it was never be about me. It's always going to be about my children. So, and as I said, I've got 2 kids with very different views. The oldest one would love to find out. The youngest one has no interest whatsoever. I suppose I've always been encouraging to them to try and find out more information if they wanted to. And I suppose it's really important for me that I looked as though I was happy. Well, not just looked, I was happy with that process. I don't know if there was like a day where suddenly it wasn't all right and the next day it was, oh, this is all fine. It's just been a gradual process over the years, to be honest. So, yeah, today I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right.
And even though I totally get the point that it would be about the child's wants and if they have the desire, but would it answer any questions in your mind? Because you must also wonder, even though it's not about your desire to find out, you might have a desire to find out information.
I do, but I think it always has to be child-centred. But look, I think I said I don't know my biological father, for want of a better term. He left when I was 3. And I have a desire. I mean, my mum ripped up all the photos of him, unfortunately, so I don't even know what he looks like. And I would love it, actually, if one day I could meet him and just have a conversation. And, if I have that kind of desire, well, why shouldn't my children? That, for me, feels natural, and I want to be there and help them in that process if it happens.
Yeah. And then, because I don't know how many people, no, I'm phrasing this badly, how many children a donor would end up donating to, in a sense. I don't know what kind of stats. Your average person who partakes of this, do they end up having... Would they, 18 years from now, suddenly get 26 people getting in touch?
26 is unlikely. So when the law changed, not only did donors have to agree to be identifiable, but also limits were placed on how many times their donation could be used. So there is currently in the UK a 10-family limit. So it's possible that in those families there might be more than one child, but there's probably unlikely to be maybe more than 15 children born from one person's donation, and significantly fewer if it was egg donation.
And do you think there's any group that would disagree with this potential change of legislation?
Yes, I think it's possible that there will be some people who would like a much... It does blur the boundary. I think, so Danny's hinted at it, that a lot of people, if they're having to go down this route, it's often not a first choice. And so it can be quite difficult to even contemplate the idea of using a sperm donor or an egg donor. And that contemplation may be made even more complicated if you're thinking, OK, this is now going to be a person who could arrive in my family's life at any point. Whereas at least the 18, you sort of can put a nice boundary and say, OK, that I've got a long time to wait before I need to really sort of think about this person.
But then even so, under the age of 18, even if it's the child who wants to find out more, would you still require the parents' approval to actually contact
Yeah, it would
the
be
donor?
parent-led under the new model, because obviously they would all be children. So it would be up to parents to decide when they wanted to find out more information about the donor and what that would look like, whether that would just be maybe some information, medical information, whether that would be actually meeting. I mean, this is sort of all uncharted territory, and it will be interesting to see what unfolds.
I mean, difficult to say no. You weren't in this situation, but we can kind of put our heads there that you'd have the right to say, no, let's not make contact yet. But could you have said no if your children were actually asking for that information?
I suspect I would have just been led by what my kids want. I mean, look, I said they're 20 and they're 18, but I rang them both and said, is it OK if I come on this tonight, to be honest with you? Well, because it's not just affecting me, it's affecting them, isn't it? And, I mean, My son loves the fact that his picture's going to be on telly, so he was very happy for me to do that. But do you know what I mean? I think it really has to be led by them, whatever my views are. People talk about it being a seesaw, and it kind of starts with the information being led by the parent, but eventually that seesaw tips in balance the kids. Right?
And I know what you mean. You've got to be nice to your kids. They're the ones who pick the care home. So you've got to be nice. And thank you very much, Nina Barnsley and Danny Ruddock. Thank you for joining us. After the break, it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's the story that made the entire UK clear the WhatsApp history this week. We'll be asking a top media lawyer whether it is indeed in the public interest for us to pore over Matt Hancock's WhatsApp messages. I'll also have my own say on the topic, so don't go away.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, do we have the right to read someone else's WhatsApp messages? You better hope so, because that's what we'll be doing in the news for at least the next 2 months. And when I say read someone's WhatsApp messages, I don't mean leaning over someone's shoulder on the bus so you can see who they got off with on Friday night. Of course you're allowed to do that. How else are you meant to pass the time? I am, of course, referring to the Matt Hancock mess. Part 8 in a series of things you could call the Matt Hancock mess. The Telegraph is printing stories based on 100,000 messages they got their hands on. Who was the leak, the mole, the rat on the inside? It was someone called Matt Hancock. I always knew he couldn't be trusted. These leaked messages he gave to a journalist, Isabel Oakeshott, now, while getting a book written for him. She was the ghostwriter, not an actual ghost, although he probably has been responsible for making some of those. Matt, for his part, thinks that we shouldn't be seeing these WhatsApp messages. First, he claimed that they'd been stolen, in the same way that your family members commit larceny at Christmas and birthdays. And then Matt claimed that we shouldn't pay attention to the details because the messages have been doctored. And if ever there's a man who doesn't do well with doctors. It's hard to feel sorry for Matt in general, but especially in this case. The journalist he worked with had previous. Isabel had convinced economist Vicky Price to go on record about taking her husband, MP Chris Huhne's, speeding points back in the day. It was good advice, apart from the 8-month jail term she got for it. She co-authored Call Me Dave, the book that made claims about David Cameron and a pig, which, as funny as that mental image is, there was no real evidence for it, no confessions, not even the pig squealed. But with all of that on a CV, Matt should have known. He probably should have handed her the messages while saying, now promise me you won't do an Isabel Oakeshott on this. The argument for publishing these is public interest. And a lot of times that's used wrongly. People say that a story about a footballer having an affair is in the public interest. I mean, no, it's not. It's a footballer. We just assume that they're having an affair. I had relatives in a care home during the pandemic, so as part of the public, I would like to know if I can trust the systems in place in our government. And the use of WhatsApp is a problem here as well. It's where politicians hide. WhatsApp messages have end-to-end encryption, and we all know what kind of end Matt Hancock is. He's the person who could eat a kangaroo's what's-it and the kangaroo feels sullied. But when a journalist files a Freedom of Information request, it can include WhatsApp messages, but how do you know which messages you're asking for? And if they magically get deleted, there's nothing that can be done about it. It's where they hide. So this tells us that the government is being run like a parents' WhatsApp group. Now, people worry that the Telegraph will spin these messages to fit their agenda. Yeah. They probably will. Of course they will. Because they're biased, like every newspaper. They'd all do it. Our job as a discerning reader is to try and spot the bias and adjust for it if you want to. But there's one man who can help. One man who can correct the bias. One man who could publish all of the messages so we know what really happened. One man that could free the information and shine a light on truth. What I'm saying is, we need Matt Hancock. And that's never gone badly before, has it? Joining me to discuss this is none other than media and crisis PR lawyer Jonathan Coad, who was actually recently asked to act for Matt Hancock. Thank you for joining me.
Yes, I have to say that's disappointing because I made it absolutely clear to your programme. I asked them not to disclose that. And that is very, very poor journalism.
OK, well, it seems like, are you OK to carry on, or is that the kind of thing that means you don't want to carry on?
No.
I can apologise for having that in the...
I'll go around because I disagree with what a lot of you say, but you've stood there in front of a baying audience throwing poo left, right and centre at Matt Hancock when your own television station has engaged in correspondence with me where I explained that I'm in a position to be able to comment on this and mentioned that I'd been approached by Matt Hancock. I asked you not to mention that.
Well, I apologise that we've...
Anybody's tempted to take you seriously or your programme seriously, here's a good reason not to.
In this moment, I can apologise for including that information, and I just need to know, you are, of course, and I would love to know your counters to any points that I made, if you would like to make them, and I apologise for having information in the introduction.
Well, I will. The difficulty is where to begin. OK, so first of all, you've asked the wrong question. Now, inevitably, I looked at this as a lawyer. And since there was a non-disclosure agreement and we are governed by laws, and doubtless GBNews includes non-disclosure agreements in its employment contracts and therefore has no problem with them in principle, the question fundamentally is, was it right for this lady, who incidentally you mentioned she had form, you didn't mention the whole of the form, she did exactly the same thing to Aaron Banks when she was asked to ghostwrite a book about Brexit.
Just to jump in, then, it feels like we agree on that point where I was saying she had form. I didn't mention all of the points that you would like to mention, and yet you're taking exception.
I agree she had form. I just thought, for the audience's sake, that the most direct form is that she broke an agreement in the ghostwriting agreement. Now, I've seen and drafted a number of these. Every single one has a non-disclosure agreement.
Right. So to try and help me, if my question was wrong...
Hi, you're going to interrupt me, you're going to let me finish.
I'm trying to work out what... Yeah, and you're saying that we're asking the wrong question. I'd love to know what the right question is.
Yeah, I'm now going to explain why. You interrupted me by saying you apparently agree with me. So had you not interrupted me, I would have got to the end of the answer.
OK, so can I ask again, what is the question that I should be asking?
All right, so I'm bound by a confidentiality obligation, both contractually and a lawyer. Now, I ask you rhetorically, you come to me, some marital problem, and you say all sorts of things in confidence to me about difficulties with your families, with your children. And then, for some reason, you're in the public arena for some reason. I think a couple of months later, do you know what? I didn't like that man. He was on television and he said daft things, or, I don't like his political views or whatever. Do you know what? I'm going to disclose everything that this gentleman said to me on a unilateral decision of my own. Now, that would be helpful for you to understand this. The point is, she was bound by a contract. So as a matter of law, there are two tests. The first test is, generally speaking, confidential information. You balance the right of people to know with the right to confidentiality. But what the law says in terms of a contract, the law says there has to be a much higher test, because someone's entered into a contract for payment. Remember, she was paid. She entered into contract for payment. So was there sufficient public interest for her to breach that contract? Now, I can tell you that as a matter of law, the answer to that question is no.
OK, but so can I join in and partake of a conversation? Your example about me talking about my private life would have no public interest unless I suddenly became an MP where I was telling people how to live their marital lives. So your example doesn't have that public interest in. And
OK, like... let's pick that up. So you think that if you became an MP, because this is an extraordinary thing to say, but let's split it out to show how idiotic it is. Yeah. So you think that if you became an MP, where you had an obligation to speak about family issues, that would entitle me to go to the Telegraph and say, do you know what? 5 or 6 years ago, you instructed me, let me finish, on issues of marital confidence. And because he's now an MP, here you are. These are all things that he told me. Do you think that's right?
So here's an example then, let's take it more ad ridiculum, that I speak to you
No, you haven't answered the question. Do you think that's right?
Yes, in the specific example I'm about to say.
Yeah, you do, OK. Well then, God help you. If you really think that obligations of confidence are worth that little, I don't believe you. I don't think you believe that's right at all.
Is there any case when there would be a time that you could break a non-disclosure agreement because of public interest? Because it seems like you're describing no possible outcome when that would be correct.
I'm saying that there has to be a very high circumstances for that. Now, I don't think there is, because that's going to be your next question. So first of all,
the interesting point is the word thinking.
The COVID crisis was the first that any government faced for 100 years. So that we discover that mistakes were made during the COVID crisis.
I know,
how extraordinary is that? Why is it necessary to learn from those texts that the government made mistakes?
Yeah, we're not specifically talking about this. I've just been given the actual email that you sent to my producer, which they'd like me to read out. As a courtesy to the lady who approached me to act for MH, Matt Hancock, I would be grateful if it was mentioned that he asked me to act for him. So it seems that you actually...
You're absolutely right, that it's my mistake I missed out the knot. I take all of that back. My abject apologies. You're right and I'm wrong. No, fair dues. I'm absolutely wrong about that. My apologies.
I think we will leave it there, but thank you very much for partaking in that conversation. Best wishes. Jonathan Code, thank you very much for joining us. After the break, on Free Speech Nation, things are about to get a bit heated. Wow. Well, we will debate whether it's okay to take children and babies to drag shows. Don't move a muscle.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Here's a subject that's sure to divide the room. Is it okay to take your child or baby to a drag show? There's been a rise in the popularity of Cabba Babba Rave. It's a show which has sparked outrage for its raunchy contents, including one dancer balancing upside down on a chair while wearing nothing but stilettos and a thong. Others, though, see it as a fun day out for the parents and a form of sensory class. To debate this, I'm joined by columnist Dominic Samuels and broadcaster and social media commentator Narinder Kaur. My first question would be, where do you stand on this? And I'm presuming it's not upside down on a chair.
Well, I think you'd be right. I was completely horrified. Firstly, when I was directed to the incident at the Honor Oak pub in Lewisham, where there was a drag queen in a miniskirt and PVC boots, bunching up his skirt, doing the splits, gyrating on the floor, whilst a confused young girl watched on, and the parents were guffawing and hooting with glee. And then once I posted that, I was directed by several people to Cabba Babba Rave, their Instagram page. I was actually blocked, which is funny, but I asked people to send me screen recordings and screenshots of what could only be described as highly sexualized themes that belong in a strip club. You know, the question isn't whether or not the kids necessarily know what's going on, although at a certain point your brain is literally like a sponge and you can absorb what is going on around you and become desensitized to that sort of behaviour. But the most important question is, why would you, as an adult, as a grown man or woman, want to perform in nothing but thongs, gyrating and doing the splits in front of babies? That's a really, really important question. Why would you want to be nothing but nipple tassels holding toddlers?
Are you telling me I'm asking the wrong question? Because I've had enough of that.
You might be.
Yeah, not again. So, to that point, highly sexualised content. Does that seem appropriate?
Well, there's highly sexualised content with singers, with dancers. You know, I'm a mother, and when my kids were babies, and if Madonna came on the telly or Beyonce or something sexual, I didn't go running to switch the telly off because they're babies. And I think it's bonkers that you're pushing this narrative, this extreme right-wing narrative, that actually you're demonising the LGBT community. Yes, you are.
Okay.
You're demonising them because you're trying to make that they're somehow going to do something to children. What are they going to do to children? Is there any evidence when you were watching these videos, the clips of these videos, may I just add, was there any real danger to children there, Dominic?
Well, there's been several other videos of separate events.
You haven't seen the whole thing?
No, of separate events with these drag queens and drag shows.
They're age-appropriate,
They're
Dominic.
not age-appropriate.
They're age-appropriate.
How the hell is a man doing a handstand in nothing but a thong,
We've got some
and another man suspended from the ceiling,
taken my kids to
in
shows.
bondage gear and stripper heels?
No, you are pushing a narrative.
You are deluded.
I'm a mother,
in other videos,
and you see
in other videos of these drag queen shows, you have girls dancing. You have girls dancing provocatively with parents throwing dollar bills at them. You've got other drag queens hosting events with signs in the background.
We don't broadcast in stereo, it's one channel each, so we've got to take it one at a time. Look at the video. Is that the kind of thing you'd be OK with?
Well, my kids went to circus shows and saw things like that. I took them to a fire show with fire eaters.
Did you see that with the man
a circus show and a fire show. Yes, fire eaters were doing all of that.
No offence,
and my kids are babies. My kids go to a beach and see a topless woman.
OK.
So it's got
to be one at a time.
Because is there any danger to... Are they doing something to children? Because you are pushing...
So are you saying...
You're pushing a narrative.
Are you saying...
It's got to be one at a time. As much as we're all friends here, it's got to be one at a time, otherwise we miss the argument.
I keep being interrupted.
No, so the Cirque du Soleil comparison.
Yeah.
You do see things that are, attractive people doing things like that. So what is the difference for you between Cirque du Soleil and the clip that we just saw?
The difference is we are talking about a company that calls itself a baby cabaret. It's raves specifically targeted at children. That's why there are children there. In other pictures from the website, you can see babies, toddlers, in nothing but a nappy while all this sort of activity is going on.
What does that mean?
It's wrong. It's wrong, and you are desensitising children to highly sexualised themes. This isn't the only event where things like this have gone on.
Because TV's never done that before, and entertainment's never done that before.
As well. The thing is, with people like you...
So why are you targeting drag queens? Why are you specifically targeting the queer community?
Because it's the drag queens that are targeting the children.
No, the mums...
Why do you want to be around children behaving like that?
How dare mums go and have fun with a baby that doesn't know?
Well, the question, not that I'm saying you're asking the wrong question, the question, the question that Dominic's saying there is that, other art form would have a sexualised... Madonna concerts don't just do baby versions.
No.
Is that a point that you might... OK, there's a question.
It's not a concert for 0 to 2-year-olds.
No, but these are age-appropriate. They made it very clear on the
Miranda, let's deal with facts now, because I'm getting frustrated.
If you think drag shows are just sexual, is there any danger? Can you see any... Are they going to do something to children?
They're in close proximity to children doing the splits with barely any clothes on.
How dare people
let's work out what the complaint is. If the complaint is about normalisation, it's not necessarily proximity or anything like that. Your point would be that children of that age shouldn't be seeing this thing.
Exactly. It's not... And look, abuse and desensitisation isn't just about physically touching a child. Anyone with any knowledge of different forms of abuse and grooming...
Dominic?
I'm sorry, let's just...
Wow, you are starting a whole narrative of... You're creating a false moral danger here.
Do the reply when we get to the end.
Exaggerating.
This can only be described as grooming. I've spoken to numerous people...
Oh, my goodness, so you
do the reply when we get to the end of the please.
Thank you.
I've spoken to numerous people with expertise in child safeguarding, and they have said to me there are clear safeguarding concerns with these sorts of events. And as I've said numerous times, this is just one of many examples of highly sexualised themes being presented to children, you know, doing mock stripper shows where they're throwing dollar bills at children.
I don't know if you've got anything to say about this.
And weird. I've got really nothing to say. Dominic, are you really trying to say that drag queens in these drag shows, that they're a danger to children? Are they showing you? And is there any evidence?
Yes.
Have you got any evidence?
There are several instances
of paedophiles.
There's
more in churches to children
there are
than there is in
several
a drag
instances of paedophiles using this new culture of let's have highly sexualised
So are drag queens
themes presented to
paedophiles?
children.
Are they paedophiles?
I didn't say that.
But you
I said
are
there
saying
are several
that.
cases
You
of
are
this
saying that.
But you are ignoring the point about the church. The church also has.
The church is supposed to be
famously
safe,
problem.
God, but that wasn't safe for children.
But what you're trying to do
There's lots of things
but
that
what
are
you're
meant to be
trying to
safe.
do is you're playing whataboutery in order to distract.
You're
from what's actually
demonising
happening
one
right now.
community, which is quite wrong.
So
and they are a threat,
I would
and
say
they've
to
had
you,
death threat
because
you're demonising them.
I would say to you that what you've just suggested there is actually pretty homophobic, because there's plenty
yours
of gay
isn't.
people or queer people, if you like,
But you've just said
that
they're
do not
grooming.
want to be associated
You've just said they're grooming.
with men in thongs twerking for kids.
They do that in circuses. They do that in circuses.
There's plenty of gay people that do not, and I'm not comfortable with that.
I think they do that at a lot of shows. My kids have been to fire shows, they've been to circuses, and there's a lot of this scantily clad and all of that. It doesn't mean my children are suddenly something's going to happen to them.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that.
Well, I would
it may
question
not
your
be
judgment as a
appropriate,
parent.
but it's not a danger.
So you just said it's not appropriate.
It may not
Right,
be
so you
appropriate.
just said it's not appropriate.
We can all agree that
But
no
it's
one
not a
agrees with
danger.
anything.
We agree that it's not
It's not a
appropriate,
danger.
so the debate is
But
done.
it's not a danger to children.
We agree it's not
We have to
May
leave it
not.
there. Thank you to both Dominic Samuels and Narinder Kaur. I'm sure we'll speak more about that later. We have been in touch with Vault Festival, whose programme Cabba Baba Rave is part of, and they said the cabaret show is designed for parents with sensory movements for babies and is a fun and welcoming space for parents with young babies. We stand against the inexcusable threats of violence against assault against our programmed artists, our staff, and directed at the LGBTQIA+ community, and are supporting the affected artists. That was their statement. So, it's time now for a break. But don't go anywhere, because there's lots more to come between now and 9. We'll see you in a few minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, there's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation, including whether Love Island has become a breeding ground for toxic femininity. That's up next. First, though, the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Let's get you up to date with the headlines. The former Health Secretary wanted to, quote, frighten the pants off everyone to ensure public compliance with constantly changing COVID rules. The latest leaked WhatsApp messages in the Sunday Telegraph show Matt Hancock and his team discussing how to utilise fear and guilt to make people obey lockdown, including using a new strain of the virus to scare the public. The Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, Jonathan Ashworth, told us Mr Hancock's political career is over.
I think the key thing is that he accounts for himself in front of an inquiry. It comes back to this point, doesn't it? Why we need this inquiry to take place quickly. A lot of people lost their lives. There's a lot of people who think that the way in which lockdowns operated has had long-term implications on all kinds of fronts. Everybody wants an inquiry because everybody wants to be able to see the evidence, to be able to debate it properly and calmly, and it's why we need to get on with it.
In a separate set of leaked messages, the UK's top civil servant described Boris Johnson as a nationally distrusted figure that he feared would be ignored by the public if the then Prime Minister introduced new lockdown rules. Simon Case was appointed Cabinet Secretary by Boris Johnson in September 2020. A spokesperson for the former Prime Minister has declined to comment. Next week's remaining ambulance strikes in England have been called off. The Unite union, which represents 3,000 workers, has entered pay talks with the government. So they've joined Unison and the GMB unions, which say there's been a huge shift in the government's position. The strikes were to take place tomorrow and Wednesday. 2 men arrested following the shooting of a police officer in Northern Ireland have been released. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot several times in Omagh last month. He remains in a critical but stable condition in hospital. 6 other men who were arrested and questioned as part of the investigation have previously been released. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have received an invitation, an official one, to King Charles' coronation. A spokesperson for Meghan and Harry told GB News a decision on their attendance would not be disclosed at the present time. The coronation itself will take place on May the 6th. And Liverpool broke Manchester United's hearts and a host of records with an historic and humiliating 7-0 win against their arch-rivals at Anfield. Mo Salah scored twice to become Liverpool's record Premier League goal scorer. Cody Gakpo and Darwin Núñez added 2 each as Liverpool scored 6 goals in the second half. It is their greatest win ever against Manchester United, and it's United's heaviest defeat against any team since 1931. TV online and DAB Plus Radio, this is GB News. Now back to Free Speech Nation.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Let's get some more questions from the audience. Our first question in this section comes from Ewan.
Hi there. Should we bring back Boris to make Britain great again?
Should we bring back Boris to make Britain great again? So there's this is the evidence that the House of Commons may have misled Boris, been misled by Boris Johnson. Sorry, I think that word is rather key there. It's been an interesting time for it, isn't it, with all of the various things that have been going on. Leo, I'll turn to you. Do you want to see even more Boris Johnson back again?
Well, I mean, I guess from the Tories' point of view, the good thing about Boris Johnson is that people know who he is and like voting for him. which other Tory leaders haven't sort of demonstrated that same ability. So I think from an electoral point of view, he'd be good for the Tories. But given that everything else is bad for the Tories electorally, I mean, I don't think there's much point him coming back. I think you know, a clean slate. Rishi's actually been doing all right, but nobody seems to know about it. I mean, he got rid of Nicola Sturgeon, which we're already putting up statues of Rishi in Glasgow. He's sorted out the Northern Ireland Protocol. He's got tanks into Ukraine. So yeah, he's doing great. But nobody seems to appreciate it at all.
Yeah, Lewis, why do you think he's not moving the dial then? I know this is now turning into a Rishi conversation. It's meant to be Boris, but
why is not Rishi? Because it's British politics. Because it has nothing to do. Because it's so far removed from the average person, and they don't trust what's going on. And I think the main thing, actually, now that I think about it, the main thing is that the Tories are so far cooked. They're done. That there's no point in like having any hope or even caring about Rishi or any Tory. So it doesn't matter whether Boris comes back. They're done in the minds of the people. The lead is so insurmountable for Labour. So why should we even? It's like a race where the guy is like 10 laps behind, and now he's 9 laps behind. You know, when he gets.
Interesting. Do you think this is just the natural swing? It tends to be a decade of one, a decade of another.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what you hope. But normally when you've got a terrible economy, soaring crime and no border control, you can vote Tory to fix it. And this time we don't, because we've had about 30 years of Labour government. Just sometimes they've called themselves Tories.
Well, our next question is from Paul.
Yes, should we legalise drugs if it benefits our mental health?
Should we legalise drugs if it benefits our mental health? Well, Prince Harry reveals that drugs were a comfort to help deal with the trauma of the Duke of Sussex, said that psychedelics gave him release, comfort and lightness, and were one of the fundamental parts of his life and the way it changed it. He's also not a fan of cocaine, apparently. I don't know why I'm going to you as an expert on this one, Lewis, but...
well, drugs. I mean, 99% of all the drugs are prescription drugs. So it's like you're talking about it's the ones that are illegal, but there's no difference between the illegal drugs and the prescription drugs.
Yes, there's a difference between legal drugs.
Yeah, one is illegal and one is legal.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's ever performed... Nobody's performed a sex act to get paracetamol.
Yeah. But...
I've been to that Boots. I don't know.
I'll make a case for this. I don't trust the medical profession. So why should they have a monopoly on handing out drugs that we think will help? They hand out drugs that hurt us, that they basically force us to take, like statins. You know, so why can't we have free reign to decide what drugs we are going to take? I'm in total favor of legalization of everything. I'm a free speech libertarian absolutist.
Free speech, free drugs,
yeah.
Free love.
Well, I think it should be free.
What's your take on this, then? Do you think the country would be better off if we had more drugs?
I totally disagree with Lewis. I mean, Harry's come out and he's like, oh, drugs help me deal with my trauma and, you know, gave me this sense of lightness and stuff. Well, why didn't you show it?
Yeah.
Why are you always crying and moaning about your trauma? I mean, maybe he needs more drugs.
Yeah, well that's why I'm in favor of legalizing it. So you look at him and you think, this guy's a plonker and he's taking drugs. Maybe I shouldn't be taking drugs. There should be openness. This is free speech, Stephen. Free speech. It's about letting people make decisions on their own without having the government bureaucracy tell us what we can and cannot do.
Do you think we should be able to give alcohol to 5-year-olds?
That's something different.
Is it?
That's something
I thought
different.
It's free. This is free speech. This is free without the government telling me what I can do with my 5-year-old.
Well, do you want to know something? Okay, I will have to say, yes. We should allow, if the parent wants to give their children drugs.
Do you have to say yes because you mean it or because I painted you into that corner?
You painted me into a corner. But that doesn't mean it isn't right. It isn't right. Sometimes we have to make the hard decisions, which is to let a 5-year-old go to the off-license and buy alcohol.
Prince Harry's come out and he said, like, oh, drugs helped me and I felt good when I was taking the drugs. It's like, yeah, they're drugs. Of course, you feel good when you're taking the drugs, Harry. That's what drugs do.
Yeah. So I don't understand. I thought my point was perfectly well made, which is if you give people the ability to choose, do you think every single person would smoke pot? No, it's legal now, but most people don't spend a lot of time smoking pot because they made a decision not to do it. We no longer have to rely on the state telling us not to do it.
I got to tell you, smoking pot's not legal now. You got to get yourself in trouble. Awkward. What are you going to say?
Well, yeah, I mean, pot. I think the government is going to decriminalise and legalise pot. Like CBD is already decriminalised, and I think the government likes it because it keeps you placid.
Yeah,
it keeps you just sitting there playing your PlayStation instead of getting angry. And going and do stuff.
And if the people want to give in to the government, if they want to basically bow down and be slaves like the government wants us to be, we'll smoke pot. But if we want to not be slaves, we won't smoke pot. You know what? I don't trust the government. I don't trust the government. Something called the Louis Schaefer effect is that the person who's an idiot knows more than the government.
And drug dealers are a lot like government. I remember when I was a teenager, I went to buy an amount of like 1/8 of an ounce of a drug. And then I realised I had to get like a 16th of an ounce from my brother. So the drug dealer took the 1/8 that he'd given me, put it down, cut a bit off it, and he's like, there's your 16th as well.
And that's a metaphor for taxation.
That was basically
and
what the government does.
He did that right in front of you.
He was like, look, I've given you some free stuff.
Yeah, by making it smaller for your brother.
It's almost like they don't have standards, some of these drug dealers, isn't it? Our next question is from Sandra.
Hi, should women get paid menstrual leave?
Should women get paid menstrual leave? This is Spain has approved menstrual leave. The first country in Europe to do so. The new bill gives women the option to call in sick in case of incapacitating menstruation. I don't know which way to look here to end up with the least offensive. Oh, my word. Leo, what is your take on this?
What is a woman?
It's someone who menstruates.
Someone who menstruates. That's you.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
I'm a woman, and I demand to go on leave for 4 days a month.
Yeah.
Because I need to be at home with my feelings. So, this is ridiculous. Nobody wants to employ women anyway. But now that they also get, now they're not even going to turn up because they're going to menstruate. It's like, come on, like men can deal with all kinds of stuff. We deal with man flu.
Yeah.
I knew I should have gone to Lewis first. Let's see if this is any better. What do you think about women?
I think you know what I think about women. Is that if you give them time to take off for menstruating, which is legitimate, what if shouldn't they be able to take time off the day after they see their best friend wearing the same dress and looking pretty? I mean, that could be very, very horrible. I know Leo will come up with many more of these kind of examples because he's a professional comic. and I'm just a personality. But I'm against women working, period. So take No, it's not a joke. I'm against women working because I'm against everyone working. I think women, while they're menstruating, and when I mean while they're menstruating, say 13 to 50 or 60, whatever the age of they should not work because they don't like working.
I knew I should have stayed with Leo.
They don't like working because no one likes working. Honestly, you might like going to the office and being flirted with some older guy, in HR or something, but you don't like working. Nobody likes working.
They do. They like going to work and forming cliques and being judgmental.
That's not work. That is not work. But I'm with Leo.
It is in the public sector.
So in an attempt to try and save all of our careers, would you take people can have sick time off if you're too ill to work?
Yeah.
Like physically, you've got a feeling that means you can't work. Then,
but come on, menstruation. I've seen many documentaries called Tampax adverts, and women can roller skate, they can climb ladders, they can wear a lot of white leggings. They can do anything a man can do.
Right, and then they're complaining that the period pads cost so much money, and they're like 49p in Aldi or Lidl.
Would you not be slightly miffed if you were paying value-added tax on something which therefore is technically a luxury, and you think, well, this is a luxury, is it not? I don't know how to describe it in a way that's not TV appropriate.
But try paying for dinner.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than 49p, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's about 11.99.
Which is what you have to pay after these women go on the, you know.
I know always you say to me I should stop you before you go too far, but I never do because I want to see where it ends up.
It ends up in an Ofcom complaint.
Yeah, so does. Our final question is from Nick.
In light of talking about going to work, in light of the revelation that train fares are about to rise by up to 5.9%, which I gather is the largest increase in 10 years, should the whole of the country get a 5.9% pay rise to be able to afford it?
Ooh, yeah, with the rail fares going up, should we get a 5.9% pay rise? So regulated rail fares in England and Wales are set to rise by 5.9% as campaigners call for reform due to unreliable services. Lewis, do you use the trains a lot?
I do, because I have a special card that enables me, so which is quite good about this country, and I feel sorry for everybody else. But at the end of the day, this is called inflation. I'm old enough to remember the last time. If you're over a certain age, you remember the last time there was inflation. Everything goes up. If they give everyone a pay rise, where are they going to get the money from, number one? And two, it'll just create more inflation, which means they're going to have to raise prices already. They raise prices even more than the 5.9%. What they need to do is, first of all, they shouldn't have done this in the first place. They shouldn't have spent...
Had inflation.
They shouldn't have basically given in to the COVID panic and just told people to stay home and then just printed money. And so...
roads end up there, although this is not about roads, it's about rails.
Yeah. Well, this all comes down to all of this. How is there inflation?
But now that we're in this situation, I mean, people were saying inflation was coming down the track, not meant to be a pun for a while. But the way it's set up is that the fares go up based on, like, July's inflation or whatever it is, and then you pay for it in January. We've just hit it really badly, that there was a spike in inflation when these figures are going to be used.
Yeah.
So we're even being ripped off even if you factor inflation into it.
But also they're trying to claw back some of the money that was pumped into the transport networks during COVID when nobody was, buying tickets. So we're seeing the same with TfL. We're seeing the same in London. So, Sadiq Khan wants to expand the low emission zone, not because there's high emissions in the suburbs and the outskirts of London. There isn't. The emissions are only a problem in the centre of London. He just wants to gouge people for money.
Well, happy notes. Our next question is from Melanie.
Well, what with Partygate, Matt Hancock and Sue Gray being back again? Are we bored of living in Groundhog Day?
What with Partygate, Matt Hancock and Sue Gray back again? Are we bored of living in Groundhog Day? Yeah, interesting. I mean, also Boris Johnson, Brexit, Sue Gray, Matt Hancock, Donald Trump, all they're back. All the classics are back. I mean, is this good, Leo, because we can just trot out the same old jokes again, or is it time for life to move on?
I mean, that is the bad thing about being a comedian. If you write a joke that's topical, then, you can't do it when the thing's not in the news anymore. So, I mean, I guess it's good from that point of view. But, yeah, everybody's bored of Partygate. Everybody was bored of Partygate while the parties were happening. The people at the party were bored of the party. It's an absolute nonsense to still be digging it up. Oh, Keir Starmer had a beer and a korma, and Boris, he was in the same room as a cake. It's like, nobody cares. The whole thing was a fraud. We know that now. It's all come out. It's a total farce. It was all concocted. There's like 27 scientists were paid by a lab to sign a letter, and then we all had to live in our mum's attic for a few years, except for the smart people who just ignored all the rules and just went about their lives. And then there's loads of spaces on the train, so I don't know what people were complaining about anyway. Anybody who's still moaning about COVID and Partygate and anything is basically a total moron.
But you're not annoyed by the way that politics works, that something happens, there'll be a question about it, but they launch an inquiry so they don't have to answer the questions during the heat phase. The heat goes out of it, the inquiry comes up with something, and whatever the result is, they say, I can't believe we're still talking about this.
Yeah, exactly. And then they choose, and that's one of the bad things about the British political system is they have that investigation, which is bad. They have one person leading the investigation, which means that that person becomes suspect and it can be denounced. So that's what happened with Sue Gray. So they just say, oh, she's biased because she's working with the Labour Party now.
Yeah, but wasn't she immediately given? I mean, as soon as the inquiry closed, she was immediately given a prime position as as a reward almost with the Labour Party.
Which, if you have a commission or investigation, you have like the Warren Commission with Kennedy's death. They had multiple people on that, so they couldn't just give out one. They had to bribe. America's better because you have to bribe more people.
I love how you
That's democracy. Bribe.
keep your references topical, don't you? Our final question is from Ash.
Is technology becoming a bit too creepy?
Is technology becoming a bit too creepy? Well, this would be the remote kissing device that lets long-distance lovers share a silicon smooch. Remote kiss device. It's, it seems gross. I don't know if you've seen any pictures of this, but Lewis, is this how you do it?
I couldn't afford the $31. That's how much it costs. I mean, it's like a blow-up doll or something. It's just a continuation of technology. It's like the telephone. It's having sex on the phone or having sex over the internet. It's just one more way for men to get their rocks off. But women, unfortunately, want to be like men nowadays, so they're becoming just as creepy as us.
Are you looking forward to the world of kissing over the internet and getting a good review on Lip Advisor?
I'll try my best. I saw a video of this thing. It's like robot lips. It's like the Terminator if they just made its lips. And I just got to be honest. I know they're selling it. Oh, you can kiss your partner over the internet. Nobody's putting their lips in that thing.
Well, I think we better move on from that mental image. Well, after the break, we'll be speaking to the founder of Mankind Initiative about why men on Love Island need to be treated the same as the girls. We'll see you in a few minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, Boris Johnson won power with 3 magic words: get Brexit done. Rishi Sunak can do the same with 3 new ones: stop the boats. In My Big Opinion, the leaked WhatsApp messages from Matt Hancock proved what we feared all along. They laughed as they locked us down. Is there an argument for an independent England? My Mark Meets guest is Robin Tilbrook, leader of the English Democrat Party. Plus, political firebrand Anne Widdecombe and tomorrow's papers. See you at 9.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Now, toxic masculinity has become a very common phrase. But do we need to consider what happens when women display so-called toxic traits? The domestic abuse charity Mankind Initiative has voiced concerns after a male contestant was left in tears when his on-screen partner went off with someone else. The founder of the charity, Mark Brooks, joins me now. Thank you very much for being here. Can you tell us what happened, first of all, so we know what we're talking about?
Well, just over a couple of weekends ago, there was a situation where 3 of the contestants, female contestants on Love Island, were seen to be manipulating and gaslighting and really being quite offensive to the 3 of the male contestants, and it seemed to be quite coordinated by them. And obviously what it left then was those men in tears and really upset and actually quite kind of psychologically harmed by what was going on. So that's the kind of issue that came up, and it's been a regular theme on many of those Love Island series.
So are we using the right phrase, though? Because is that toxic femininity or is it toxic behaviour and we don't need to slap a gender on the end of it?
Well, it's toxic behaviour. I mean, we and other charities don't like the phrase toxic masculinity because we find it quite offensive. We also think it very much blames men who have got problems in their lives, and it gives excuses for people not to talk and support those men. So we wouldn't agree with toxic femininity either. So you've got toxic men and you've got toxic women, but there's nothing particular about a gender or sex when it comes to being toxic.
So some people, certainly online, would use phrases like toxic masculinity, and therefore one would presume toxic femininity, to say that it's those traits taken so far as to be toxic. But I guess, was that what we saw on the show? I suppose what I'm asking is, ganging up, is that a naturally feminine trait, or is it just a bad trait?
It's a bad trait. Yeah. I would never try and label any particular sex, for example, of having certain bad traits, because again, when you're looking at things, you have to look at what the individual person is going through, and also the individual who is actually committing any type of abuse against them. And if you put labels on, actually you start to move away about thinking about what that individual actually needs.
Yeah.
So labels aren't good.
So we should, in some ways, pay less attention to the person doing it and more of the effect it has on the victim. Is that OK are we saying victim, or is that a word that's...
Yeah, well, in those occasions, yeah, there would be a victim. Yeah. When people come out of that and start to move on with their lives, that's when they become a survivor. But yes, we need to always focus on the victims. I mean, that is where the focus on these issues has to be.
But we are living in a year when, like, the response to this on TV was loads of newspapers saying that behaviour was, they might have used the phrase that we've just disproved, but at least it was called out. Are we in a better place in terms of dealing with these situations? You know, if bad things happen to men, are we less likely to receive the message of, what are the phrases, the man up, the shut up about it, those kind of things?
It's getting better, but we're a long way behind. You know, you still get issues where, for example, men are ignored. We looked at figures this week, rough sleepers. About 17 out of 20 men who sleep rough are people who sleep rough are men. But when it came to the reporting of that issue, the word men was hardly ever mentioned. You've got 3/4 of the people take their own lives of men. Boys are behind girls at every single stage of education. So there's more people, the general public, are more aware of these issues, but the politicians, the people who run Westminster and Whitehall, for example, are not doing enough to sort out issues which affect men. They just seem to ignore them. And our view, certainly my view, is that that's because they're men rather than actually they're issues that don't want to be solved.
So why is that then? Why having the word men in a sentence would it elicit a different response from someone?
Well, I think it would start to trigger the fact that these types of issues really do affect men, because at the moment when they're discussed, people are not thinking, well, there's so many of these men who have got problems. We've got kind of narrative, I suppose, in society that basically women have problems, men are problems, and therefore that those problems that men do face seem to get swept under the carpet when it comes to actually politicians talking about those issues, government action, and also public bodies really taking issues which really are concerning men at the moment. We are not doing anything to resolve the fact that boys are behind girls at every stage of education. We had 20,000 more men die of COVID than women. There isn't a men's health strategy. There is a women's health strategy, which is good. And also all victims of domestic abuse, all male victims, are actually called victims of violence against women and girls. So the government announced some big measures a couple of weeks ago on domestic abuse, and they just talked about it as though it's an issue that affects women and girls.
Right. So are you saying that we need specific pointed help for men, or we just need to widen the help to include men rather than for some reason exclude them?
Yes, we need to widen the help, but there are some issues where, in some ways, you can tackle things which actually particularly help men. So that's why charities like ours and others, which are domestic abuse charities, and we support men, and obviously we want other charities to support women, because sometimes there are particular barriers and issues that affect men which are different to those that affect women.
Is it good to have things like this happen on TV, then? It raises the profile. You sat here today because of some nastiness on Love Island?
Oh, absolutely, because what it means is that the public are far more aware about issues like this affecting men. We will see more calls coming to our helpline, and other charities will do. And also, it will make men feel that they're actually more likely to be believed and then come forward to the police or their friends and family and others. So, you know, in the round, the spotlight on these issues is a good thing.
But at the same time, you have the newspapers having those headlines, calling out that behaviour as bad, maybe using the phrase toxic femininity. But the help you're after seems to be more policy-based, or at least changing the way that these things are dealt with through politics, because it seems to be skewed and you want it more fair. Is that going to happen? Because we can have all the people saying, oh, men can talk about things now, but at the same time, if domestic abuse is simply called violence against women and girls, you're still going to be shut down as a man.
In terms of local services, there's great local services for male victims and local police forces. So this is an issue at a national level which really needs to change. And men's issues, men's well-being issues, needs to be higher up the political agenda now than they've ever been before, because the issues are getting worse for men and they're being ignored, and we need change at a national level.
OK, thank you very much for that. That's Mark Brooks, who's the founder of the Mankind Initiative. Thank you very much. Now, an ITV spokesperson gave us a statement and said there is a welfare team solely dedicated to the islanders both during the show and after, and all of the islanders are therefore fully supported by the professionals on site and by their friends in the villa. After the break, on Free Speech Nation, have teachers totally lost control of their students? Don't go away.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen. Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it. Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know, Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. It seems pupils are following their teachers' lead in striking from a lesson or two. Reportedly, at a school in Oxfordshire, pupils demonstrated in opposition to the introduction of gender-neutral uniforms. Meanwhile, in Merseyside, pupils protested against skirt-length inspections, and even in leafy Cornwall, children flipped tables and chanted while shaking fences over the introduction of stricter rules on toilet breaks. Well, the rebellion is being widely circulated on TikTok. Joining me to explain why it's going on is Head of Education and Cultural at Policy Exchange, Joanne Williams. Thank you for joining me. What's going on then? I mean, is this just a TikTok thing, or are we seeing a massive problem with protesting kids?
I think it's actually both. I think children are protesting in schools up and down the country. It's far more than a handful of schools right now. But it's also something that they are circulating on TikTok, and it's becoming a bit of a craze, it seems. And these aren't just strikes, as you or I might understand the word, but in some instances, it seems more akin to mini riots with urine being thrown around, bins overturned, children kind of organising mini stampedes out of corridors. You don't want to overreact, you don't want to cause a panic about these things, but I think it does seem to me to be a sign that teachers in some schools certainly have lost control of what's going on if children are behaving in that way.
Obviously, on one level, great that they can organise anything. But, I mean, what do schools do to get control back? Because I remember being at school and we never would have got away with that. So what's the difference?
Well, I think one thing is actually to look at the role that adults are playing nowadays in encouraging this kind of behaviour. So the most famous example I can think of is Greta Thunberg, when she organised the school strikes for climate change. Many head teachers seem to take it upon themselves to write letters home to parents, essentially saying that we think this is an important issue, and if your child does decide to take the day off, well, hey, that's fine with us. And almost to the point where they took on the Erever school trip in some instances, with teachers helping children kind of draw up the placards. So I think children have seen that this is an acceptable thing to do. If you've got something you want to protest about, then missing lessons is an acceptable way to behave. A few years before that, we had parents pulling even the youngest children out of schools because they didn't like the form of assessment that was taking place. And personally, I think that's a terrible message to send to young children. If you don't like being taught, if you don't like having a test to do, then you just take the day off and bunk off, and it's okay. Your mum thinks it's all right. And I think children also at the moment are clearly seeing their own teachers on strike outside schools. And much of that seems to me to have the air of a social media publicity stunt more than a kind of picketing to make your case to people who might be walking past.
But I can take the point that maybe slowly the children have been taught a lesson about protesting. But as soon as one of them throws some urine at you, I think you'd probably change your tune and tell them to stop. Why does that moment not count?
No, I think it absolutely does. And this is where teachers have completely lost control. But I think the important point is when you go so far in saying this is okay, and if you have a problem, we'll listen to you and we'll act on whatever you say, it then becomes very difficult to demarcate that point at which you're going to say stop. I mean, I think there's all kinds of reasons here. I mean, for a long time now, many schools have had what I would describe as non-existent behavioural policies, or very soft, very lenient behavioural policies, where the emphasis is on trying to understand what the child is trying to tell you when they behave badly, rather than just saying, stop it, that's not acceptable, sit down, shut up, listen to me. That kind of thing, which I would suggest would be properly authoritative behaviour if by a teacher, if you're faced with a child who's being completely out of order, is seen as being authoritarian, kind of might damage the child's mental health. Much better to be all kind of touchy-feely nice about, not touchy-feely. That's obviously very bad, inappropriate thing for teachers to do. But you should be kind and nice and listen to the child rather than just telling them, I'm the teacher, I'm telling you to sit down and that's the end of it. So I think that kind of behaviour policy's been in place for a long time. And obviously we've had lockdown, 2 years of lockdown where schools closed, often for long periods of time. Many children haven't come back to the classroom. At one point there was talk of 100,000 ghost children who just disappeared from roles. Obviously, if teachers, schools are not authoritative enough to even get children into the classroom in the first place, again, it calls into question their behaviour to actually enforce discipline once children are there.
OK, we can see some video now of one of the protests that was on TikTok. I mean, it's easy for us to talk about these recent causes, but is there a more gradual graph to plot about behaviour and discipline in schools?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was a teacher myself 20 years ago now, and there were huge problems with behaviour in some schools then. And although the policies about kind of not disciplining children who were behaving badly, but trying to psychologically understand what was causing that behaviour, I mean, certainly those kind of ideas were really coming to the fore even at that point. And other things that really undermine the authority of the teacher. I think it's been a long time since teachers have felt that when they go into the classroom, they can be fully authoritative. So I think all of these things mount up. I do think some of the rules that are being enforced around toilets, that they are quite grim. If I was a 13, 14-year-old girl, I wouldn't want to have gender-neutral toilets. I wouldn't want to have gender-neutral school uniforms. So I think some of these rules do seem petty and to be politically motivated, even in some instances. But I think the problem is teachers have gone so far down the line often of being in favour of these kind of overtly political policies that, again, they are then unable to have a proper conversation with parents or with children about how such things can be changed through kind of official ways, if you like, without the children having to resort to striking. But I do think, again, in terms of what's new, I think TikTok and social media is a massive influence on this, where children are seeing that this is what's happening at other schools. And then the premise, the starting point becomes, let's have a protest, and then let's look for a reason to justify our protest. Whereas you think if this was children really having an issue, it would be the issue that would start first, and then how can we get the school to change their minds on this particular point?
OK, thank you for that. Former Head of Education and Culture at Policy Exchange, Joanna Williams. Thank you very much. We'll turn to the panel on this. Surely you can do both. You could have a way of being understanding of the children's motivation and also saying, stop throwing that bottle of wee-wee at me.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of protests get infiltrated by a few nutters, and that's what's happening with the urine throwing. And we're seeing this at other protests. A whole protest gets destroyed in the media's eyes, in the public's eyes, if somebody turns up waving the wrong flag. So yeah, that's what's happening here.
Do you think the far right or far left are infiltrating schools and pretending to be a school child to get in on this protest?
No, but I'm saying there's always going to be protests that attract crazy people who want to shout. So you're always going to get some crazy people who want to shout and maybe throw some urine and wave a swastika. You're always going to get a few of them turning up to a protest.
You've teed me up nicely. Crazy people who want to shout. Lewis, when's your next protest?
I mean, like, this is news. They're teenagers. They're teenagers. They're acting like a bunch of teenagers. That's what teenagers do. They're sort of in between line between an adult and a child. And what are adults doing? Adults are protesting. It looks like a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. I was a teenager in the early 1970s. It's hard to believe, but I was a teenager back then during the Vietnam War, and we used to go to moratoriums and protests. We spent half the time not in school because of bomb scares. So we're in a time of tumult. You can't blame TikTok or anything. This would have happened even if there's nothing going on.
Okay. Well, after some corking videos, if you're after some corking videos, we've found some for you, and they went viral this week. Don't go anywhere.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We dedicate this part of the show to the world of social media, and often the stories are threatening to cancel someone or something. First up, TikTok, the worst Chinese invention since COVID. Here's one Gen Z TikToker, as I insist on saying. I'm not saying Z. Being annoying. Let's take a look.
Carry on, man.
Well, I can't carry on while you're in the background.
Why not?
Because you're in the shot, like you can see you.
Yeah.
You're literally in the
Hello.
shot. Yeah.
Hello, guys.
But no one wants to see that.
Why not? How do you know what
My
people
followers,
want to
I
see?
know what my followers want to see.
Your followers?
Yeah,
Oh,
because
you're
this is
Jesus
for my
now, are you?
followers. Yeah, the followers that follow my fitness program.
All right,
They're not
okay.
going to want to see you sat there in the shot.
And what sort of fitness program is it?
Well, it's following my fitness journey.
Oh, you on a journey?
Yeah, to get fit.
All right, well, I'm staying on.
Enjoying that on radio and wasn't quite sure what was happening. It was a video where someone was trying to film a fitness video and guy sat on a park bench wouldn't move. I think we call him the hero of the piece. Leo, your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is the sort of irrepressible force of a young TikToker meeting the immovable object of some guy who doesn't care. Beautiful to see.
Yeah. Lewis, you enjoy his work, or you were more of a team her?
I felt his pain. I felt his pain because he's like some old dude. The girl's paying no attention to the guy. This is what happens, men get older. We just sort of become invisible. And, it happens to it's a horrible story. She got what she deserved. She should have flirted with the guy for a second. Oh, look at how beautiful those shoes are.
We've got to move on before you finish the end of this story as well. Up next, Philip Schofield was eating meat live on ITV. Squirrel meat, that is. And it got people talking.
Which is now in my head.
But the point being is,
absolutely,
if it's a wild organic meat, why shouldn't we eat it?
No, I hear you.
To venison,
I hear you.
Ready?
But my...
Yeah, go on.
Wow.
So
it's chewy.
Chewy?
Mm.
So they were eating squirrel meat, may contain nuts. Lewis, would you like it?
As long as it's not an American squirrel.
The grey.
The grey squirrel. Just no.
Hang on, you're saying you want to eat the precious endangered red?
Well, it's local. I don't like to have imported products in my diet. And I'll say this. We need to eat meat. I eat meat. I'm moving more and more to a 100% raw meat and animal product diet.
You can. We've actually. We can see your lunch. There it is.
Is that squirrel?
That's
squirrel eggs.
Talk us through it, Lewis. What were you about to eat there, and then bring up straight after?
That's just basically what I do. Is I take the eggs and I remove the yolk, most of the egg whites, and then I just slice up raw steak.
Right.
And I eat raw steak.
No good at cooking? Is that what that is?
No, it destroys the nutrients. I saw a YouTube video. And I believe this to be true. It destroys the nutrients. It's way more easy to eat. Meat that's cooked is dehydrating, which is why you need to drink water with it. But I saw another video that said when you drink water, it's actually dehydrating. So
I'm pretty sure drinking water isn't dehydrating.
That's what the scientists want you to believe, Leo.
Well, is it not true that water can dehydrate your skin? So why shouldn't it?
Well, I can tell you chemically, if you drink pure water, it leaches the minerals out of you, but no one's drinking distilled water. So other than that,
okay, the minerals out of it.
Oh,
but
what have I done now?
Yeah.
Started it. Let's move on now onto the part of the show where we talk you through the unfiltered dilemmas. Our first dilemma is from Leo in West Yorkshire. I recently broke up with my girlfriend and she has a compromising photo of me. She isn't the most stable person and I'm worried she might share it online. I'm having to be nice to her and pretend we're still friends, even though she's bonkers. What do I do? Fellow namesake Leo, what's your advice?
I'd say, don't worry about it. If she posts it online, then, you can say, no, it doesn't look like that, and then show them a much better picture of it. If she does, then she's committing a crime, so you can report her to the police and then sue her for damages.
Yeah. And lose that case, and the police won't do anything either. So, here's the advice. You have to be nice. You have to always maintain friendships. This is just the tip of the iceberg, but women are capable of anything.
That's mildly the most pro-woman thing you've ever said.
Just you've got to be nice. There's no harm in. There is some harm, but you don't. You got to be nice. It's like Andrew Tate. Why is Andrew Tate in prison? Because some girl. Because he.
This is one of those things where I think I really need to stop down this rabbit hole. It'll never work again. Well, thank you for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when we learnt that it's OK to air your dirty laundry in public if you're from a broken home, and everyone in the UK deleted their WhatsApp history. Thank you to my panel, Leo Kearse and Lewis Schaefer, and to all of my guests. And if you want to join us live in the studio and be part of our wonderful audience, you can. Please go to www.sroaudience.com. If you want to get that. Stay tuned for the brilliant Mark Doland tonight. That's coming up next. And don't forget that Headlines is on every night at 11 p.m. That's the late night paper review show where comedians talk you through the next day's top news stories. Thank you for watching Free Speech Nation. Goodbye.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. It is going to turn colder over the next few days. The risk of some snow, particularly across the north of the UK, but more widely some frost and ice to contend with. Looking at the bigger picture, this frontal system moves south over the next 24 hours, introducing cold Arctic air across the whole of the UK from Monday into Tuesday, though the Atlantic starting to return by the end of the week. Through into the evening and overnight, a lot of cloud across the UK, some showery outbreaks of rain in places, but there are some clear spells, southeast England for a time, across Northern Ireland, Scotland, and we'll see temperatures here falling close to, if not below, freezing. Snow showers across northern Scotland and eastern Scotland, risk of ice to start Monday morning, 2 to 5 centimetres possible, even to some lower levels, so some tricky conditions here first thing Monday morning. Elsewhere,